Hey, yo, what is going on, Snap Judgments fam? Tuccrr here for Glazer today, bringing you a brand new video on this beautiful Friday morning. The OTA just happened yesterday. We got an OTA deck list in over here that Glazer made that I think is absolutely fantastic. We also have a deck list that we're going to go over from the #1 player in the world. I think these changes in the OTA are really awesome. Glazer, of course, went over these changes in yesterday's video, as well as Flash talked about some of these other meta decks during yesterday's video as well. But let's go ahead and jump right into the content for today. As always, you guys, please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you're new. Please comment the answer to the question of the day that we'll be asking later on in this video. Who knows? You might just win a season pass. But let's go ahead and jump right into the first list. So, starting off with a young new news arishem list. To no surprise, arishem is still doing absolutely fantastic in the meta right now. This is the list that young Nunu actually used to hit rank #1. We're going to break this down, of course, with some card by card, turn by turn kind of play here. It's got Leech and Dr. Octopus as two of your focal, like, tech slash truly mess up what your opponent's going to do kind of plays. I'm not a huge fan of getting hit with a Doc Ock or a Leech, which is another reason why this deck is just so successful. And you have all these other tech options with Shang-Chi, with Enchantress, Nick Fury to add a bunch of different 6-drops, and you have the extra energy so you can play those 6-drops out. And if you do get the Quinjet value as well, you know, it's just absolutely incredible. You know, arishem just is running really, really solid right now. And then, of course, you have Rogue for another tech option too. But, of course, this is young Nunu's handle as well. It's going to be X, Twitter, whichever you call it, .com/young Nunu. Loki, Blob, and arishem are needed for this list to function. The only other Series 5 card we have in here is Mockingbird, which could be Vision or could be She-Hulk, especially now the Mockingbird change. She is a 6'10 now, so it does kind of fit the She-Hulk kind of mold, except Mockingbird is going to be better in this type of list because, of course, you are throwing cards down that do not start in your deck normally. And this is what we got over here. So it's an insane win rate with being #1 in the world is no easy feat. So just being able to do that, and that just shows how just incredible arishem is overall. Of course, your turn-by-turn play is you're going to be playing your Quinjet because you got all these random generated cards. You're playing some Loki stuff, so you know the synergy's already there. You don't necessarily know if you're going to get a Quinjet in turn 1 every single game, so you may just throw some random cards down out on curve to get them out of your hand, or you might keep them in your hand for some Loki stuff. Turn 2, you have 3 energy. You're going to be playing Coulson or a random generated card. Nick Fury on turn 3, or Mockingbird if you have some cards on the board. You have Loki as your follow-up on turn 3, especially if you've bricked your hand, so you can go ahead and start playing some of your opponent's cards out on the board. And if you have bricked in, let's say you have, Coulson already down, that's an extra 2 cards in your hand. So you have about 5 or 6 Loki cards that you can just get there and then. And then if you're doing really solid, you can do a turn 4 Leech or Doc Ock, depending on what you're up against. You can do more Leech stuff if you're seeing your opponents playing some more on-reveal cards, or do Doc Ock if you're trying just to offset their combo potentially. So that's why it's really kind of just crazy there. If you have Quinjet down, you can also play a 6-drop on turn 4. So that's just some different ways you can do it. And then, of course, you can just Loki tempo on turn 4. You're going to have more cards in your hand at that point. So if you brick later on, you still have the Loki stuff. And then you blob turn 5. Another 6-drop, or you can still Loki potentially on turn 5 too, because going into turn 6, you're going to have 7 energy, and if you have the Quinjet down, you get some great Loki stuff there. Turn 6, you're going to be playing Blob, another 6-drop maybe, or you're just playing some of your tech cards in order to counter what your opponent's doing. If they're playing some Darkhawk stuff, you have your Enchantress and Shang-Chi to be able to offset that, or just steal their Darkhawk with Rogue. So you have a couple different just tech options in here, which is why this list works so well. Because you have an option for pretty much everything. Of course, you also have your random draws from arishem. Moving on over, we have Den's Toxic Sarah list, which has a really awesome take, I feel like, on Ajax. Ajax is the brand new card that came out this week, Series 5. This is a good deck list you guys can use for your weekend missions as well. Of course, Den is another amazing content creator for Marvel Snapstone as well. You guys have seen his decks on Snap Judgments many times before. But this list right here, you're being able to just kind of look at what's going on and kind of read the room kind of board space. You have your Sarah shenanigans. It's kind of like a Toxic Sarah, and you get to maximize it with Ajax. Den, of course, you can follow him on Twitter or X, whichever you like to call it, x.com/denccg. Thena can be swapped for Scorpion if you do not have Thena. And you could find a way to try and put magic in here, is what he was saying in his tweet. You could do that for a potential other Ajax Hazmat combo if you don't have your Hope down, if you don't have the Sarah. That extra turn will allow you to just play Ajax and Cosmo on Hazmat on turn 7 because you have 7 energy. But these are the different lines for it. Of course, you play your Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde's only 1 drop. You'd play that on 1. You have Thena, White Widow, Angela, Jeff as your turn 2 options. Could just play Kitty if you don't have any of those. Trying just to get some of this basis out. And then after you've gotten Thena on the board, you're kind of just trying to just play 2 cards. You're limiting yourself to 2 cards. Of course, it is combo dependent, seeing on which your opponent also has as well. But you're playing, like, on turn 3, a Kitty with Thena, which gives you the Thena buff, or a Kitty with Angela if you have Thena already in the board, giving yourself another Thena buff. Kitty with White Widow also works because I'm just saying, just trying to get the Thena buff a lot. Or you can just get Hope Summers on the board, which would enable you to get some of your combos a little bit earlier, being able to get some of these bigger cards out early. Turn 4, Kitty with Hope buffs Thena. You can just play another tempo Hope on 4. Like, these, of course, as if you got the God Hand or not. But playing just 2 cards out with Thena, like, enables you, of course, to get that +3, or playing, how Thena works and stuff. And then, of course, you could have Nocturne if you need to turn off some locations. But Kitty Pryde's still going to get a lot of just value in this list, enabling you to more often than not play out 2 cards. And if you do get your ramp with Hope too, it enables you really to just guarantee you can get like 2 cards out. Your turn 5 play is where it really just gets a little dependent. If you have your Hope down, if you play Doc Ock onto the Hope Summers, that gives you 7 energy going into turn 6, which would allow you to play your Ajax and Hazmat on turn 6. Or if you just play Sarah on turn 5, that also allows you to play your Ajax and Hazmat on turn 6 as well. You can also play into Kitty if Kitty has some great power there too. Or if you still want to limit yourself to the Thena value, you would just play the 2 cards like we were talking about. You have Nocturne and Jeff as some movement cards you can have in your 2, so your opponent has to be guessing on where you're going to be moving this stuff. You could tempo Ajax. I think tempo Ajax is definitely not what you really are wanting to do, because you're kind of wanting to save Ajax so he doesn't get Shang-Chi, doesn't get Rogued, doesn't get Enchantress. So you're kind of saving that for like a turn 6 play more often than not. But if you wanted to tempo, you could. That's why I have it as like the least probably likely thing you'd want to do on turn 5. And then you're wanting to Hazmat at the end of the game. I think that's the biggest thing you got to understand with Ajax. It's Hazmatting at the end of the game because it allows you to maximize how many cards are on the board to get some better Ajax value. Your only other card that's really getting big in this list as well is Thena. So if you don't get your Doc out early, you're really trying to focus on making sure you are only playing 2 cards at a time so your Thena gets very powerful. Other than that, you're running a more of a mid-range / probably low-range list unless you get your top end with Luke Cage. Being able to protect with the Hazmat value, of course, and like with the Ajax can go vertical. And like I was saying, like with the Luke Cage and stuff too, which we weren't really talking about a lot with Ajax because it does kind of counter what Ajax does, but you still are afflicting your opponent's side of the board. That's another reason why like you're playing it later in the game, the Hazmat. Just in case you do play the Luke Cage as well, you're hitting more of your opponent's cards in order to protect your cards since you are running more of a low-range deck. And then, of course, we do have the Marvel Snap stream team, which I'm actually a part of. Gaming with Flash, you guys saw yesterday's video, was a part of it as well. I will be going over and playing most of these decks on stream tonight. Or actually, no, during the day today at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Our schedule kind of rotates a little bit, but this is the stream team we have. We have Gregor on Mondays, Prashaun on Tuesdays, Gaming with Flash on Wednesdays, Parry Manilow on Thursdays. So hopefully you guys got to catch Parry's stream last night. Me today, I'm going to be streaming at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. We won't be streaming at the nighttime. And then on Saturday, FaThorNewman, so tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, you can catch FaThorNewman playing some of the decks of the week, some of these weekend mission decks. And then on Sunday at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, you can watch KingofCanada stream as he also goes through some of the decks of the week. And then, of course, my video for this right here with gameplay, I'll be showcasing gameplay for one of the decks that I had the most fun with tomorrow on Saturday as well. So be on the lookout for that at 2 p.m. Eastern time. The next list we're going over here is some Hydra Bob things. So Hydra Bob actually did get buffed in the OTA today. It doesn't show it on screen, but Hydra Bob is going to be a 1/5 now. And this list by Safety Blade is very, very interesting. It's another kind of mid-range deck list over here, but you're still pumping out quite a bit of power. You're using Hope Summers as an engine card. You have actually Silk back in this list moving around. You got Hydra Bob moving around, so you're getting some of the miles value. You could potentially get Vision out early with the Hope Summers, or just be able to play other cards with Vision instead of just a late end card. But you're always wanting to be moving stuff here to really be able to maximize your miles value. For that tempo, be able to get Kraven in a good spot. You have Nocturne for some location control or just altering what locations have been, played and everything recently. You have Juggernaut to protect some of your lanes too from some of these later game plays, especially with the change to Blob now. You can move Blob off of the Juggernaut lane, which is actually pretty solid. So I really, really like what Safety's got going on over here. And with so many cards moving around, it's kind of hard to predict sometimes where everything's going to end up. Is Kraven going to get in the Shang-Chi range? What exactly is going to happen? But Safety was cooking with this list. Hydra Bob can be swapped out for Titania or Nightcrawler. If you look at like the Nocturne replacements or like a Silk replacement as normal, like those movement cards are already in this list. So I really couldn't think of specific replacements for those two when it came down to it. But I think the biggest one you could maybe, if you did not go for Hydra Bob last week, you could do like a Titania or Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler would enable you to get some movement and be able to also play on your Hope Summers lane and move off the Hope Summers lane. And I know we got a lot of words on the screen over here. So I'm just looking through the different lines. You're playing Critic Pride turn 1. You could play Hydra Bob turn 1, but I'm thinking more of playing Hydra Bob later. You can kind of look at your board space with Hydra Bob 2. See if you need to snap just to move Hydra Bob to get some miles value. So it's very, very interesting as well. You have Kraven down. Kraven's in a very good spot where if your cards are just moving onto Kraven, Kraven gets buffed. Something you would play on too in this order, I think, too, is also like getting Kraven set up for a potential Silk later or a Jeff. Angela getting into a good spot so you can continue to play cards onto Angela and then move them off to Angela when you play other cards on top of her, like you would play Silk onto Angela. You're trying to get your Hope Summers out early too so you can start ramping out some of these other cards. If you don't have Hope, you'd go into like a Nocturne. You have your Kitty Pryde and Angela you could also play on your turn 3 to be able to get your Angela buff, and you could play Kitty and Silk onto your Angela as well. Being able to move that Silk, be able to start that going so you can get some potential miles value, get some Kraven value. And then, of course, turn 4, if you don't have Hope down originally, you go ahead and you do some Kitty Hope stuff there on turn 4. And that also, really enables you to just continue to get your ramp going. And then you have Kitty Pryde and Nocturne you could play on turn 4 too. Jeff and Silk, Jeff and Angela, just getting some power and some cards that you can just kind of move, all over the place and stuff too. Just get some cards out there. The power is mid-range. You kind of are just playing like tempo, seeing what your opponent's playing to, how are they affected with all this movement. Your turn 5, you could do your Kitty, Jeff, and Silk. All of this onto an Angela. All of this on either similar lanes or alternate lanes. You're playing onto your Silk to move your Silk to get some more Kraven value, to get some miles value. You kind of want to have a card moving on turn 5 in case you do draw a miles or you have a miles in your hand in order to kind of maximize that value. So he's a 1/6 because playing out miles at a 4 cost just doesn't feel great. So you're just trying to make sure you have some movement happening so you can get that combo out. And then, of course, you have Kitty and Vision you could play if you'd played onto the Hope Summers the lane before. You can't move Vision that same turn, so you wouldn't get the miles value there, but you'd probably play that onto a Silk to get that moving, or you would snap to make that Bob move so you can get some miles value. You can do Kitty, Angela, and Jeff. Just another card you can move onto a Kraven lane at the end of the game kind of thing. You can do Kitty, Bob, and Hope. If you have the right tempo there too, you can play all of those onto Hope Summer, so you have extra energy. You could walk into turn 6 with 8 energy there. I guess something you actually could tech out if you don't have Nocturne, thinking of it now, is you could do something like a Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel would also work with the Kraven. It doesn't change the locations like Nocturne, but it is another movement card that could give Kraven the extra 2 power if Captain Marvel does move onto that lane. And then, of course, your turn 6, you're playing Jug at the end of the game to move cards off of your Kraven or to move cards off of a winning lane, so you can pretty much guarantee a win for yourself there. It can protect your Kraven from a Shang-Chi. It can protect some Alive stuff, too, if you have the priority, or just blob stuff. Maybe not Alive stuff because of the priority, but you can just move some of these bigger cards off of your lane because it's mid-range stuff. And honestly, Juggernaut is super underrated right now, especially with the blob change. You can actually move blob with Juggernaut now, whereas Cannonball used to destroy blob because, you can't move it to another lane. I think Juggernaut's value is going to be through the roof, so very excited to see what happens there. And then, of course, you're playing your Bob out a little bit later, your Miles out a little bit later, and you have Shang-Chi if you want some extra just tech there. If you do get a movement card going into turn 6, you could play Kitty, Bob, Miles, and Shang-Chi if you played on the Hope Summers the turn before. So it's got all sorts of different lines. It gets a little interesting because it's like a newer, just silky smooth, but your top end, you don't have the Red Hulk anymore. But silky smooth was already in a great spot. With these extra little movers, I think you can totally go over the top, and Safety Blade's been having a lot of success, and you have Safety Blades freaking vibing with this list. You guys are going to be able to vibe with it too. He makes a lot of great decks that are pretty easy to learn. So definitely check out Safety Blade. His Twitter is also linked over here as well. But yeah, that is the general gist of this list. Moving on to our next list, we have our first official OTA list over here. We have Viper getting changed to target the lowest powered card in this lane to be able to swap over. So that works really well with this Sentry package here. It's a target for the Hood as well. Annihilus Bounce was in a great spot a couple seasons ago, and I think what Glazer's made, because this is Glazer's list, it's ready for a comeback. It is ready for a resurgence. So very excited to see how this all is going to work. I think you have the Sentry things, you have your Annie things, you have some Shadow King tech. You don't have Shang-Chi in this list, but you're trying to just clog your opponent's side of the board or limit what all is happening to them. Sage value, I think Sage is even better as another just alternate card instead of Werewolf. You can sometimes get bigger than Werewolf too, depending on how many cards you're bouncing. And there's the synergy between each other. As we were looking at this, of course, if you don't have Werewolf or Annihilus, I believe they're needed in this list to be able to throw over the junk, and it is a bounce Werewolf package. If you don't have Sage, though, you could do something more like a Wolfsbane. And if you don't have Nico, you could potentially do like a Hawkeye or a Yondu. Yondu would be for some more disruption. Hawkeye would be for some extra power on the board for some of these bounces and everything too. But that is the general, just the replacements there. As it goes to turn by turn, this is kind of just like play at your leisure, kind of like what exactly do you have in your hand. You would start turn 1 playing a 1-drop. Simple as that. You could play your Rocket out turn 1. I just wouldn't suggest playing Rocket because it's not a guarantee where you're going to hit, because still it's a 1 out of 3, whereas I like Rocket more as a late game play. Turn 2, you'd play 2 of your 1-drops up. So like your first 2 turns, you're playing 1-drops. Turn 3 is where you get a little bit interesting. You could play your Werewolf out on curve, or you could play a 1-drop and a Falcon, and you bounce the other 1-drops you'd already played onto the board back into your hand, or you could play 3 1-drops if you drew your 1-drops late, depending on how it all works, if you bricked or anything. Turn 4, you'd play Werewolf and one of these on-reveal 1-drops to get your Werewolf pump going. Or you could play Sentry. Sentry could also work as well. If you don't have either of those, you could do 2 1-drops and Falcon to start your bounce as well. Turn 5, if you have your Sentry on the board, you can do your Annie. If you don't have your Sentry on the board, you could do a Sage and a Beast. The only thing is, if you have a Werewolf on the board, you're kind of wanting to play your Sage and Beast on not on the same lane, I would say, because you don't really want to bounce your Werewolf. You kind of want to keep your Werewolf on the board while you're doing all these on-reveals. Or on turn 5, you could do your Werewolf and 2 of these on-reveal 1-drops. That also works. Or you could Viper over the Void now, since it is a targeted on-reveal now. You could Viper your Void over to your opponent's side, and then you could Falcon in order to get some of these 1-drops back into your hand, or you could Beast. Maybe you did play a Tempo Sage, which isn't horrible, especially if you can Beast the Sage back into your hand. And then turn 6, if you have Beasted Sage back, or if you haven't played Sage yet and you've beasted your 1-drops, you could do Sage and multiple 1-drops. If you played multiple 1-drops in the same turn, with Beast, of course, they cost 0 going into turn 6. So it's a bunch of different honor reveals you can play with your Werewolf, as well as Sage, or you could just play Sage and 3 1-drops if you just Falcon them back. You can play Annihilus and another 1-drop, both those being on reveal, or it's Annihilus and a Hood potentially kind of thing, which does also buff your Werewolf because Annihilus is a 1 on reveal. You could do Viper and Sage. Viper would send over the Void on the right side, and then you have your Sage on a different lane in order to get some vertical value as well. You could do Shadow King Sage in a 1-drop, also as 3 different on reveals for your Werewolf. It's really just kind of just playing at what all you have played already, but that's kind of just like the focal point there too. There's a lot of instances, especially if you are clogging your opponent's board, where it's just snappable. You could also bounce a Viper back if you want to do some other just like clogging negative power kind of things. You could even send over a Ham if you wanted to, just to limit your opponent's board space. There's a couple just like solid conditions over here. It just really is what are you facing and what you have in your hand. It's very flexible. That's what made like Annihilus bounce so good already. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this is going forward. Glazer said he already got an Infinity ticket with his deck, so that was pre-OTA too. So if you think about it now, I think it's going to be in a really solid spot. And then I got a question of the day for you guys. My question of the day for you guys, Ajax came out this week, okay? What is Ajax's real name? Let us know it down in the comment section below, and who knows? Maybe with this question today, it might be the Season Pass giveaway winner. Just let us know. And then also definitely subscribe to the Patreon. Have some absolutely amazing Patreon people are going to be going over here in just a second. If you are subscribed to our Patreon, it only costs you $1, and you can enter into one of the biggest Snap leagues pretty much every single season. I know I have a lot of fun playing it. There's all sorts of other amazing content creators who play in it, and you guys in the community. We have a blast. Absolutely blessed that from all of the sponsorships for the Patreon and for the Snap Judgments League, Gunny T does an amazing job running it too. And join the Discord. Definitely join the Discord, my friends. And as we do our closing remarks, let's go over who all is part of the Patreon. I might butcher some of these names, so I am sorry if I say your name incorrectly. We have Abigail Geeslin. We have Mandatory Burnout, Cables, Dumbs, Irregularis, David G. Wingfeld, Direwolf, Ellie B, FaThorNewman, Good Dog Gamer, This Is the Way, Inc., I Am Frostman, Jaya Neverett, Doom 3R, Primed Ryan, Caterix Lee, Core, Pyro Forest, The Goat Seeker, Denman Falcon, Quid Pro Joe, Doc D, Fat Nick, Ginger Prime, Philip Ratkovic, Hoplo, Kenny Loggins, Rob Silverman, The BZA, X-Force V, Skippy G, Tommy Nyquist, King of the Bros, Black Dahlia, The Great Kazoo, Jessica Gamble, Ryan Wood, Kevin Shota, Luna Crisis, Archangel 3K, John Q, Luis Antunes, Models, Darth Tater, Rainma, Celaya, Brian Kaufman, Tristan H. Martin, Jason B., JD McDonaldino, Fuzzy Dunlap, Spectrumix, Hoot, Matt H., Mikey Hijinks, No Flex, Ocularis, Craig Sterry, Seamus, Spike Jones, Two Ties, Lauren Whatevs, Tuccrr, I don't pronounce your name right all the time, but Min, thank you, and Gunny T. And I would say, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching the video. I think the OTA that happened today was really solid, and I think Ajax is probably going to get into a better spot in the future. I think he came out at a very tough week with arishem running rampant in the meta. But thank you guys for your time. If you guys did enjoy the video, once again, feel free to like, comment what Ajax's real name is down below. Definitely hit that subscribe button. If you guys want to check me out on Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, any other platforms, it's going to be TUCCRR. Tuccrr. Until the next time, my friends, definitely subscribe to the Patreon as well. Love you guys. Keep it real, and Tuccrr out.